Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to We Forum. I'm Claire Knopf, Board Chair of Monmouth Medical Center Foundation. Monmouth Medical Center is honored to be a partner and a beneficiary of the We Forum event. Just as We Forum educates and empowers individuals to strengthen their health and wellness, Monmouth Medical Center and the Monmouth Medical Center Foundation empowers our neighbors, families, and communities to enter the future of healthcare that we have to offer, making us a healthier and stronger community. Accessibility to healthcare is a priority at Monmouth Medical Center. The support from so many of our partners, such as We Forum, and the philanthropy of members of our community is what allows us to bring world-class services to Monmouth Medical Center. We have a remarkable morning ahead of us with a full lineup of accomplished speakers discussing health and wellness topics. On behalf of Monmouth Medical Center, I thank the We Forum Committee and especially Carolyn DeSena, who is our fellow Monmouth Medical Center Foundation trustee. Carolyn? Be careful.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you so much. I know this has been a wonderful journey. It's been a very long journey, and I'm so glad this day is here. So thank you all for coming, and thank you so much for rushing downstairs. As you know, we're on a very, very tight schedule. I just want to tell you that this would not have been possible without the unbelievable committee members that we had, the We Forum committee members, Monmouth Medical Center. It really took an entire community of people to put on this event. So could you please give a round to the women all around this room who put on this amazing program today? Thank you very much. Really, it's been an amazing journey, and these girls have done an amazing job. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. You're going to be seeing them all throughout the day. We've got Callagy Law, who is our main sponsor of the event. We want to thank them. And most of all, if you guys have seen the program, it's a pretty robust program. We have got speakers all the way from South Central LA. We've got them from Virginia, from DC. We've got them from upstate New York. And most importantly, how about a shout out to the speakers who are here locally from Monmouth County. We've got them from Little Silver, from Rumson, from Asbury Park, from Red Bank, from all over Monmouth County, and the support that we've gotten from our vendors and from all the people that were involved from Monmouth County has really been unbelievable. So if there's one thing that I can tell you that I'd like for you to take away today is to make sure that you guys learn how to be your own health advocate. If you can learn how to be an advocate for yourself, you can be an advocate for your family, your neighbors, and your community. And we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that at the lunch. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host of the event, who is my friend and my neighbor when I was living in New York City, Alexis Glick. She is the CEO of the Gen Youth Foundation, which is an organization devoted to the health and wellness of children. And that organization is connected to the NFL, the National Football League, and also the Milk and Dairy Organization. I'm sorry, I think that's right. Please welcome Alexis Glick.
Here we go. Good morning, everyone. I am so happy to be here with you this morning. And as Carolyn briefly mentioned, we go back to our days in New York City. She's a dear friend. I love her to death. And when we first were living together in this building in Manhattan, I think we started with one child each. And by the end of it, you know, there's 7 of us. So it's an honor to be here with you today. I adore you, and I'm so proud of you and what you're doing. So, to start out for the morning, I'm going to give you a couple quick housekeeping notes. We have, as Carolyn mentioned, a jam-packed agenda, and you're going to hear from some world-renowned speakers, so I'm going to keep my comments pretty short. As you can see upstairs, there's about 100 vendors. We have 26 experts throughout the day who are going to speak on their respective fields. There is a connection cafe, which is where networking can happen between speakers and attendees, so take advantage of that. They're going going to be podcasts. Melissa Stark, I know her well from the NFL Network days. She's going to be doing a Facebook live stream and doing interviews, so you can tune in to her. And then WeForum's Wise Up Teen Advocacy Group, there'll be a discussion on Hydrate for Life as well. Of course, we're going to have some phenomenal keynote speakers after lunch. The one and only David Boulay and Dr. Suzanne Blum are going to do the Doctors series on the food-immune connection, which should be fabulous. Before we talk about who's coming up in terms of the next speakers, I do just want to mention something that's near and dear to my heart. First of all, you're here today for the reasons that you will know all too well, to make sure that your health and wellness is front and center, to raise awareness in the community, and to raise awareness about the free educational opportunities and, of course, the connection to Monmouth Medical Center. As I was looking at the agenda for today, what I recognized is this is a room full of like-minded people. This is a room full of people who care deeply and recognize that health and wellness is central to our well-being. But when I look at some of the statistics that Carolyn and her team shared, they're near and dear to my heart. And if I can for just a moment, I want to share some of these statistics. I don't share these when I travel across the country to shock and awe you. I share them because I want them to incite you and for you to understand what we're dealing with across the globe, and particularly here in the United States. First of all, we recognize that food is inextricably linked to our health and well-being. But the critical thing that many of us don't realize is that as many as 23 million American children live in food deserts across the United States. Believe it or not, almost 50 million experience food insecurity. And of that 50 million, 13 million are children. 13 million in the United States are children who do not know where they're going to get their next meal. So when you think about some of the issues that we're talking about today, about the importance of health and well-being, it's hard not to recognize what's going on in the obesity epidemic. Let me share one other statistic with you that if it doesn't shake you to the core, I hope it will. By 2030, at this rate, half of all adults are projected to be obese. So imagine, in 1970s, that was 15%. That worries me. That terrifies me. And when you think about our kids today and their lifestyle, how many are parents in this room? How many have kids? The vast majority in this room. Our kids today are sedentary. We have a crisis in physical inactivity. A statistic that I share across the country is that in today's school environment, only 4% of elementary school students, 8% of middle school students, and 3% of high school students have daily physical activity, have daily PE as we know it. Could you imagine? We grew up in a world in which gym was not an option. Well, today our kids are sedentary. And oh, by the way, they're on a device up to 7 hours a day. You calculate that in a full week, our kids are on devices for the equivalent of a full-time job in a given week, 45 plus hours. So why me to be your moderator and to kick this off? Well, you can tell I'm slightly passionate about this. I am the mother of 4 young kids, but what I do at Gen Youth, which is the largest health and wellness program in the United States, we work in 75,000 of our nation's schools. There's approximately 95,000 across the country, so we're in 80% of them. We reach upwards of 40 million kids a day. I am blessed, as Carolyn said, to do that in partnership with the National Football League, all 32 NFL teams, and America's dairy farmers, about 45,000 of them. So I was so excited when I knew that I was going to get a chance to know Joel and Ron, because I'm a huge believer in knowing where your food comes from and teaching kids about the importance of gardening, the importance of understanding what agriculture is and pursuing a career in agriculture. But here's the thing I'll tell you. I travel across the United States. I jokingly say to folks that I'm the female version of George Clooney up in the air. I'm not firing people, but I'm on a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles telling the story because I'm trying to uplift the voice of the student across this country. And I'm blessed to have done that with the likes of Michelle Obama and work with many of the government agencies. Here's the thing I want you to understand. Depending on where kids are in the United States, some kids have lunch at 10 a.m., some kids have lunch at 2 p.m. But as we discussed before, 13 million of them are food insecure. And that meal, that lunch, whether it's at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m., depending on where you are in the school building, may be the only meal of their day. In fact, in the United States, it accounts for 50% of a kid's average daily caloric intake. So while you may not feel it right here, there are communities miles away from here who feel it. And so what I do is I travel the country and I say, not only do I want you to be the advocates and health ambassadors in your communities as you are right now, but I want you to uplift and empower the voice of this next generation, because they are not the leaders of tomorrow, they are the leaders of today, and they need our help. So let me just finish by saying this. We have an amazing opportunity today to be champions of our own health, to understand how food and physical activity affect our behavior, and to listen to some of the best experts in their fields. Take advantage of this. And one thing I say in every place I go, we can have this conversation amongst us in this room, but what's critically important is that we take this conversation outside of the room. So I encourage you, for those of you who know me from the media life, to use social, We Forum group, and share out some of the messages and things that we learned today. So the future is ours. The challenge is an opportunity. We have to band together, and we need to inspire others to be the inspiration and the aspiration that our kids look up to. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our first speaker of the morning, Nadia Panavia. See, I thought I was going to get it. When asking Carolyn why she wanted to invite Nadia, I'm going to share with you a little bit about her, but this is what Carolyn said to me. She said her journey from Wall Street to the kitchen, where she took the passion and interest in understanding how food affected the body, and ultimately developed a business that prepared plant-based meals for people on the go in choosing a healthy lifestyle, is why I wanted her to be here this morning. So if you don't know Nadia, you will know pretty quickly that she's helping us break the sugar addiction. She's changing the way we understand our body's chemistry, and she's done some research, and she's here today to help us understand how to lead a healthier lifestyle. She's going to take care of us, and she's going to give us some great pearls of wisdom. So without further ado, here's Nadia.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me at the back? Excellent. Well, that was an amazing introduction. We're here to save the world. We've got it all nailed. It is an absolute honor and a pleasure to be the first speaker today in this wonderful conference. Thank you so much, Carolyn and the organizers, for putting it on. I'm going to start this morning with a little thought experiment. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment and close your eyes and think about all the things that we struggle with day to day, whether it's about controlling our frustrations, being patient when the children are driving us batty, whether we haven't made it to the gym, or we're surrendering to that 3 p.m. cookie that we told ourselves we weren't going to do it. Okay, thinking about it, keep your eyes closed. It can make us feel a little bit overwhelmed. And then we think, well, God, if only I had a bit more time, or a bit more money, or even a bit more self-discipline. But now, open your eyes. I'm going to tell you, it's not your fault. It's not our fault. It's not because we're all too weak-willed or don't put enough effort into it. It's not our fault. And that is such a beautiful, freeing thing to figure out. There is nothing wrong with us, and that's what I'm here to tell you today. The struggles that we have with food and health and our general state of well-being, why some of us haven't quite nailed it, isn't any failing on our part, but rather it's because it's been thrust upon us. And this morning, in 8 minutes, I'm going to tell you why. My name is Nadia Panavia. I'm Italian, as you probably can't tell from the accent, but I did grow up in the UK. I moved to the States 11 years ago. As Alexis mentioned, I don't have a background in food or medicine and nutrition, though I do have a very geeky PhD in quantum chemistry. And I grew up in finance until about 4 years ago when I discovered that it was not our fault. Here's the setting. It was 2014, it was January, and my mother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 3B kidney cancer. I'd lost both my parents at a young age. I was very young when my father died, and my mother passed of breast cancer some 10 years prior to that. So with my mother-in-law's diagnosis came the somewhat pessimistic but realistic, oh, not again. And I started to look to food to see if there was a silver lining in an attempt to give my mother-in-law any extra resources she could have. And I came across Dr. Servan Schreiber's The Anti-Cancer Diet. And I learned how today's modern diet filled with refined grains, added sugar, and processed prepared foods was actually provoking inflammation and weakening our immune system that is constantly staving off cancer cell growth. And little did I also know that that very same diet that is insulin provoking was actually fueling cancer cell growth if we had succumbed to cancer. Who knew? Up until then, I kind of lived in this world that good health was about avoiding the empty calories and not eating too much. And cancer was largely down to unfortunate genes over which we had no control. But here's what got me thinking. If the modern diet is responsible for fatigue and mood swings and lack of energy and lack of focus and all those extra stubborn pounds, all the way through to some forms of chronic diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, and even some forms of cancer, not all forms of cancer, but some forms of cancer, why is it so hard to stop? And the answer is because we're addicted to crap. Which means we just want more and more. And that's why that conventional advice of eat less, move more makes sense, but it is often doomed for failure if the brain is actually telling us to eat more and move less. It's not our fault. The brain's been hijacked and reprogrammed. And how did that happen? Let me tell you a story. Oh. Okay. So meet the players, big food, and then hormones that many women in this room will acknowledge drive behavior, including amongst those hormones, insulin, ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, and leptin, which is the satiety hormone, and dopamine, which is often referred to as the hormone. So, once upon a time, we used to eat real food. It was grown in the fields, and it was often prepared by the woman at home. And then came female emancipation, which is a good thing. And very kindly, big food and big agro, its cousin, stepped in to give us the convenience of prepared food. And soon we were eating more and more, and we just couldn't stop. Why? Well, big food soon figured out that if you remove the natural fiber that came from processing and fat, which was the villain of the last century, and added sugar to make it taste better and increase its shelf life, they could create a really highly palatable food which made us want even more and more of it, which was fabulous for corporate profits. So now let's meet the crappy food cycle. And I apologize because I don't think people in the back can see this, but I'll talk you through it. Once we understand this cycle, we understand that our brains have been hijacked. Today's modern diet, which isn't just the consumption of McDonald's and hot dogs and sodas, we kind of know that, but it's more the fruit juice, the bagels, the organic granolas, the fruit yogurts, the protein bars, is spiking our insulin, which is causing us to store energy as fat. And in absence of real fiber and nutrients, it's provoking ghrelin, the hunger hormone, to tell us to eat more. Add sugar to the cocktail, and now you've got dopamine that's screaming out, yelling to you, give me more, give me more. So it's the biochemistry that's driving our hormonal responses, which we know drive behavior. So by definition, if biochemistry is driving our behavior, we've got very little control. So to change behavior, we need to change the biochemistry. Are you all still with me here? So, Meet now the real food cycle. A high-fiber, nutrient-dense diet reverses that crappy food cycle. A whole food, predominantly plant-based diet without the added sugar, but full of nutrients and fiber, keeps insulin low, which then releases... I'm sorry, I've 7 minutes here. Okay. Which releases leptin, which is the satiety hormone, which then tells the brain, I'm full and I feel great. And so plants are the most predominant source of fiber, and so our mums had it right all the time. We often think that healthy eating means holding back, going hungry, eating salad all day long, being deprived, but that's not a long-term sustainable way of eating. The ex-smoker does not miss smoking. The ex-smoker, I've never met an ex-smoker that misses standing outside the office, shivering in the middle of winter, having a cigarette. It's the smoker that thinks they're going to miss smoking, because the brain will tell us anything to hijack us, to get us to take that next hit. And the same is true with food. Once we begin to detox with real food, our body reverses that crappy food cycle, and we can restore our metabolic and our brain health within weeks. Why do we care? Well, here come the numbers. Stay with me. I'm going to run through these because I'm sure we all know them. Today's healthcare costs, annual healthcare costs, $3.5 trillion. 75% of that is spent on chronic disease management, not reversal or care, and of which 75% of that, $2 trillion, are spent on food-related diseases. $2 trillion. That is 3 times the US military budget. Just think what we could do to our education system with a fraction of that. And then we think, well, okay, but that's not relevant to me, right? Well, let's take a look. Out of the and again, apologies if you can't see that, we've got 240 million adults in the US today, of which 72 are obese, but only 57 million of those are actually sick, have metabolic disorder. The others are actually very, very healthy, and they're fine. So now let's take a look at the other bucket. We've now got 84 million, on the other side, we've got 67 million people that are in that normal and overweight bucket that are actually sick. We've got 10 million more than you do have in the obese. And what's worse is we have, out of this healthy population, 1 in 3 have pre-diabetes and are headed towards diabetes in the next 5 years. So that number is going to increase. So actually, it does affect every one of us in this room, and we all have the power to change. So how do we make this easy? Let's go back to that real food cycle. Switching to a whole food, predominantly plant-based diet makes the food do the hard work. What does that actually mean? It means, 1, we're swapping out those refined grains for whole grains. Why? Because we keep insulin low and we keep inflammation low. 2, we're swapping a lot of animal-based protein for plant-based protein. Why? Because we're keeping insulin low and inflammation low. There's a pattern here. Because that fiber that we're getting from plants is actually helping to suppress insulin and keep inflammation low. And 3, we're avoiding all sugars and sweeteners. Bingo, because we're keeping inflammation low and inflammation low and insulin low. And it's also improving our gut microbiome. So that's 3 really simple switches. That's all it needs. And the body is amazing in what it can do in 28 days. So here is a slide. This has actually been from results that people have come to us on our program. But you can drop LDL by 41 points. Our goal is to take people off statins and take them off the blood pressure medication. So LDL drops by 41 points in 28 days. A1C can drop by a point. That means we can reverse pre-diabetes in 28 days. You can reverse type 2 diabetes in less than 3 months. And the numbers that get everyone excited on the other side, I'm sorry, can you go back one, please? Are the weight loss that occurs across the board, and on average a 9 pound, but it occurs across the spectrum. So in 28 days, the body's a miracle in what it can do if you just give it the food and let that food do the hard work and change the biochemistry. And if we do that, we can restore our health and well-being. We'll all feel better, and we're certainly going to help the planet too. Thank you very much.
I love that title, It's Not Our Fault. Don't you always feel like everybody's like pointing fingers at us? Thank you, Nadia. That was wonderful. We're free. Do what makes you happy. Lead a healthy lifestyle. Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Phoebe Lapine, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about destination wellness and planning your route. How do you get there? We all know what it's like to power through a situation no matter what, and even if it's a chronic illness that threatens to bring us down, the push is on, and you've got to do something about it. And Phoebe has the skills, advice, and the encouragement to help us do that. She loves to talk about finding the sweet spot between health and hedonism. And I think this is something, of course, that we can all appreciate. We want to optimize our health, but we want to savor our life. So without further ado, let's bring up Phoebe.
Hello. We hear volume good? Little higher? Someone might have to help me with that part. Okay, I'm Phoebe. Better. Okay, great. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my illness story. And my guess is if you're here today, maybe you've been touched by one illness story or another in your life. And mine, to be honest, is, maybe not as dramatic as some of the ones that you've heard before. There were no crazy climaxes or collapses or misdiagnoses or hospitalizations. Instead, my body kind of contains some more subtle warning signs that didn't always capture my attention. But eventually, they kind of added up and led me to the same question that I think a lot of autoimmune sufferers eventually ask themselves, which is, why don't I feel well? So let's start at the beginning. I was diagnosed with something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis when I was 22 years old, just out of college. And at the time, I didn't know what an autoimmune disease was or even what a thyroid was. As it turns out, it's right here. I was basically just told that it was totally normal for women my age and totally treatable with a synthetic hormone called Synthroid. Didn't know that it affected over 20 million people, 7 times more women than men, and that said synthetic hormone was actually the most prescribed medication in America. So I was actually lucky in that I grew up in a household with a mother who was a crunchy hippie and an early adopter of the organics movement. And her idea of medication were these little white homeopathic balls that dissolved under your tongue. And even though I had my own period of rebellion and, would take the occasional Z-Pack and was on birth control pills, for whatever reason, hearing that I needed to be dependent on a pill for the rest of my life was not something that sat well with me. That was not something that I wanted to sign up for. So I did what, any mature 22-year-old would have done in my shoes, and I pretended the conversation never happened and went on living my life. So in the years that followed, that was when I kind of slowly started to descend down to the bottom of Health Mountain. I basically was doubled over in pain every time I ate, which as an aspiring food writer and chef was quite an occupational hazard. Even trying to do the healthy thing and exercising, I would have to stop within half a block because of the horrible pelvic cramps I was getting. I was exhausted all the time, but couldn't sleep through the night without waking up at 4 a.m. in a pool of sweat. And to add insult to injury, my hair was falling out and my skin was a complete disaster. I started to look like what my teen idol, Cher Horowitz, I don't know if there are any Clueless fans in here. No. Okay. What she would call a full-on Monet. Fine from far away, but up close, a big old mess. It was something called perioral dermatitis, and it was just a very lovely rash around my nose and mouth. So eventually, vanity actually became my most powerful motivator, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. I knew I needed to make some big changes, but as I started to kind of wade into this overwhelming world of wellness, I started to see how I was shifting from one extreme of denial and the pendulum was swinging to another one. And, you know, being a young person living in an expensive city over there in New York, I didn't want to have to throw out my entire apartment and replace everything with some derivative of unbleached cotton and baking soda, as so many holistic experts online told me I needed to do in order to be well. I needed to find some sort of protocol that would help me find my own definition of balance, and not something that would require me to drink celery juice or meditate 3 times a day like, you know, the cover girls of the Whole Foods magazine aisle. I wanted to know, again, being young and trying to figure it all out, how do I take my body more seriously and learn to let go at the same time? How do I learn to do right by my body without giving up my life? So I decided to actually dedicate an entire year in 2015 to answering that question, and doing so by making one lifestyle change 1 month at a time. So I began by asking experts on all sides of the wellness space that I'd gotten to know a little bit through my work. So yogis, acupuncturists, gastroenterologists, healthy chefs, health coaches, and I asked them all the same question, which was, if you could tell someone one thing and one thing only to change about your life that would have a big impact on your health, what would it be? And the answers to my one big question were surprising. No one talked about superfoods or SoulCycle, or mentioned oil brushing or oil pulling or dry brushing. Definitely no mention of celery juice. Instead, they all talked about kind of the bigger picture. And with these answers in my back pocket, I developed a year-long curriculum that covered everything from making over my hydration habits, to taming stress, to switching my beauty products to natural options. I moved, I meditated, I cooked a lot, and I fed my gut critters, I balanced my hormones, got my sugar consumption under control. And, you know, in sum, I kind of put one foot in front of the other and took these baby steps back up Health Mountain until I found my own new normal again. So with these illness tales, you know, everyone always wants to know, like, did it work? And yes, the answer is it definitely did. But the thing is that, you know, in terms of blood work and clearer skin, for sure, thumbs up success. But again, that wasn't necessarily all by itself the core of my mission. It was to find that elusive balance, as Alexis said, something I like to call healthy hedonism. So the middle ground between the things that nourish your body and then the things that actually feed your spirit. So really quickly, I'm going to tell you 3 of the challenges that had the biggest impact and what they taught me about healthy hedonism. So first was my first challenge, and I called it the Vice Detox. I decided to give up all added sugar, caffeine, and alcohol for 30 days, which, you know, is really easy, as Nadia explained earlier. So in addition to discovering for myself that sugar is indeed in everything, it's not your fault, I also learned something that was incredibly valuable, which is that sometimes it takes these periods of extremity in order to find that balance moving forward. So even though I went back to these vices in moderation after that 30 days, the 30 days was all it took, and it was the only thing I'd ever tried that actually cleared up my perioral dermatitis, and 3 years later, it's still gone. It's incredible. So the second thing, 2 changes actually. One was, as I mentioned before, switching my personal care products to naturals during a month on Green Beauty, and putting a water filter on my tap during Hydration Month. So those might not be, you know, top of your mind in terms of changes to make, and they certainly didn't have that kind of black and white, night and day, wake up the next morning looking different kind of effect, even though they did clear up my toxic burden for sure, long term. But the lesson there is that you have to set yourself up for success at home if you want to find more flexibility out in the world. So even today, I have to think about my food choices every day, 3 meals a day. Whereas these changes were one time, and I don't have to lease any mental space to them going forward, except for remembering to change the filter on my water. Okay, so then last, speaking of, the monkey mind, my last challenge of the whole year, I learned to meditate and I revamped my morning routine so that I wasn't starting the day leasing out space to other people and instead focusing on myself. And that was, of course, very effective for me and habits that I continue to this day. But they also reinforce kind of an important lesson that was overarching for my year of health, and that is seeking perfection can cause more stress than the end result is worth. And when you're worrying about being healthy all the time, no amount of kale that you eat and no highly filtered water is going to make you healthy. So I'll end just by saying something that I feel not enough wellness storytellers acknowledge, and that's that change is really hard. There is no hack. You can't do it with a like or a retweet or a sachet of detox tea or a bottle of adaptogens or even just one 21-day reboot. It takes time and it takes effort. But if there's something that the roadmap I set up for myself, and certainly that my story can tell you, it's that you don't have to do all of the above all at once. You can kind of pick and choose your own wellness adventure, and that's because balance is not a place with exact coordinates, and you can't adopt healthy habits until you know what habits are healthy for you. So it's my hope that you'll all consider doing your own type of wellness project, be it a month, a year, if you're crazy like me, what have you. But, be willing to go out there, find that middle ground between health and hedonism. Figure out what your hard lines are so there can be more wiggle room. And, take the scenic route back up Health Mountain, because from where I'm standing, the view is pretty good. So, thank you.
Phoebe, you're so inspiring. That was great. Oh, I love it. You've taught us to love ourselves and listen to our body. I mean, what a great lesson. Okay, so now I'm super excited to introduce our next guest. And we were talking about my leather skirt and his leather pants. He's super cool. And oh, by the way, he is the gangsta gardener. I have to come up with some kind of name like that. But his name is Ron Finley, and he is doing something that I feel wildly passionate about. Basically, as Carolyn, as you know, when you know Carolyn, she does an awful lot of research. And when she researched him, she saw his TED Talk. And if you haven't seen his TED Talk, you need to do that on community gardens. But he started a conversation about the importance of community gardens, and he ignited a spark. And he is that fire that we need in our communities. He is the reason people understand how we need to give back to the community to help them be inspired about what they can do to bring food closer to the home and to address wellness. So people thrive around the beauty of their communities and how those communities and those gardens can inspire. And that is exactly what Ron Finley is doing. And he has come here all the way from Los Angeles to be here with us today. So it is my joy to introduce Ron Finley.
None. And that bracelet. How you guys doing this morning? Let's start with the bad news. There is no good news. None. And it's like a lot of what I'm gonna do is echo. You guys can change the slide, or you can just change them every minute. They're having some problems. Is it working now? I don't think it's working. Oh, so just whenever. A nation that destroys its soil destroys its soul. Why? Because we are soil. Right now, we are witnessing the continued destruction of our food system, and not enough people know about it, and not enough people care. What you do to nature, you do to yourself. We must become loyal to the soil, like Joel is. Change your food, change your life. Change your diet, save your life. I started growing food on the streets in South Central Los Angeles. And I mean, it didn't start out like that. It started out, I wanted to see beauty. You know, I wanted to walk outside my door and have hummingbirds kiss me on the ear and, you know, butterflies on my shoulders and all that kind of shit. I wanted to see agapanthus and these beautiful flowers, and I didn't get that. I come out and there's a toilet or a mattress or a dresser, condoms, you know, on my parkway, and you know, it just let me believe that, because I go to other neighborhoods, and it wasn't like that. And so if you see ugly every day, that becomes your normal. If you see beauty every day, that becomes your normal. So what I tried to do was, I wanted to see beauty every day. I wanted to smell beauty. I wanted to look at beauty. I wanted the streets, you know, to have artwork on them. And so I figured, because I traveled, and every community that was of color had these same problems. And it made me think, okay, good in, good out. If you put good in, that's what you're going to get out. But if people are surrounded by ugly, concrete, asphalt, you know, unhealthy food, that's what I decided to change. But I'll ask you guys, what is the single most important thing to your life? I'm going to ask you again because you didn't hear me the first time. What is the single most important thing to your life? And you would immediately say, inner peace. No, hippie. No, it's not. No, it's not. What's the single most important thing to your life? No, not even close. No, and I'll ask this question. And I asked this question yesterday at a junior school. And one of the kids got it right. It's the same thing for all of us. No, it's not oxygen and water. It's oxygen. It's air, period. Why don't we say that? Why don't we celebrate air? Why don't we pledge allegiance to air every day, every morning? But what do we pledge allegiance to? Why? Is that giving us life? You sit there and you put your hand over your heart and you pledge allegiance. Do you pledge allegiance to your family, your mother? Do you pledge allegiance to Mother Earth? No, we don't. We have not been trained to do that. Why? Who benefits from this? What this is all about is values. What do we value? We value what we've been trained to value. One of the biggest things right now, that's to me is one of the biggest cases in the world of our time, because it affects the whole planet. And it's the Monsanto where Dwayne Johnson. Anybody know about this case? Raise your hand. See, and it's everybody in this room should know about this case because it affects the whole world. Dwayne Johnson sued Monsanto, and he won because of this incurable cancer that this product Roundup gave him, and he was awarded $289 million. That was reduced to like 80 million dollars, and he said, I've never been so happy about losing $200 million. But the thing about it is, Dwayne's gonna die. He's got a death sentence because of because of Roundup. You guys have to realize that if you're not eating organic, everything you have in it has blasphemate in it, glyphosate, the stuff that's in Roundup that caused him to have cancer. And they've proven this throughout this case, and they've known about this for years, but they still put it in our food, and we blindly eat it. So I mean, why don't everybody on the planet, why doesn't everybody in this room know about that? And we should, and you should spread it. You know, we're allowing greedy ass corporations basically to destroy this planet and therefore life as we know it. Because right now, these things right here, you guys know what that is? Sperms. Y'all laughing. This shit's serious. Man's sperm have not had a jump at all. Our sperm rate is constantly going down to a rate of 2%. No, every year. So between 1973 and 2011, we've had a 59% decrease in sperm count. So we say, what the hell is it? He's a gardener. What the hell is he talking about sperm for? Because with this decrease, with all these chemicals and all these disruptors in our body, what's happening is this can affect the whole planet, because this can affect if we're going to still be here. So it's that serious. You got to realize that everything is connected. But the poison that they're putting into our planet is poisoning us. And we're allowing this to happen. So you got to think, they're literally know that they're going to take future generations from us. You know, and that's why this is serious to me. So right now, it's like Frederick Douglass once said, an educated man is unfit to be a slave. And right now, we're all slaves. All of us. We're slaves to these corporations. And we have, like with these elementary schools, I was so happy to go to the school yesterday because they are learning the art of food. They are learning how to be self-sustaining. And all you guys are talking about, the new word in corporate is, so that's the slide right here. That's what we got on our plate. It's the emperor's new food. It ain't shit on your plate, but we're supposed to act like it is. Everybody act like, ooh, I got this healthy food on my plate. There's actually nothing on our plates. These kids are learning the value in growing food, preparing food, and also the economy of food, because at this junior high school, they actually have a class where you can order a panini that they've grown some of the stuff in their garden, and they will bring it to your office at school. So they're learning economics. Okay, and that's how us that's in this food industry, people are like, well, how do you get people to grow food? We got to make it sexy. We got to take these brilliant marketing tactics like the diamond industry and make this sexy. Why do we buy diamonds? Anybody want to ask me? Why? They're rare? See, and you believe that shit. They're really not rare. They're not. There's nothing rare about them. It's a piece of carbon that came out the ground. And it's these brilliant ass marketers like De Beers that came out and said, spend 3 months' salary for your engagement ring. No, I'm sorry, spend 4 months' salary for your engagement, just a couple of years later. So what do? You run out, and the guy's like, damn, I got to get this engagement ring. It's got to be big enough. And then they walk away. You know what's brilliant about that marketing? The brilliance that nobody sees, and it's around the world, is They never say shit about your wedding ring. That's brilliant, because they know you're going to buy a wedding ring 9 times out of 10 if you got an engagement ring. And you know you have to level up on your wedding ring. But it's like I told the kids, because the kids, they want, what's most important? Being rich. So I said, okay, you got this, because I want a diamond. Yeah, I'm a diamond, so I'm going to be rich because I have a diamond. I said, okay. So you bought this diamond ring. And where she puts it on her finger and shit. Ooh, girl, that ring. Ooh, girl. Okay, so you paid $500,000 of your richness, and you bought this ring. So who's rich? You just gave this man $500,000 for a chunk of carbon on your finger. Values. We got to treat, and my thing is changing these kids' mind of what truly is value. You are valuable. Nothing's more valuable than you. Nothing. Not a pair of Jordans that people kill people over. What you put in your body is valuable. Everything that we put in our body and on our body is killing us. They have toxins in it, and they know this. And the EPA and all these other clowns ass organizations is letting this happen. Why is this? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why are we not reading labels? I tell the kids, I had this thing where I bring snacks in, and I okay, I brought snacks for everybody, and they go crazy. I said, but you can't eat them. Like, what the hell wrong with this guy? I said, go on your computers, go on your phones, and read the back of the labels, and I want you to tell me what those ingredients are associated with. It takes a minute. I have 2 mics usually set up, and they come out and they're like, okay, this, that, this is, irritable bowel syndrome, this thing, they got this product that they put in ice cream and cosmetics. And it comes from the anuses of beavers. And I'm like, and I tell the kids, okay, you want to eat beaver butts? Is that what you want to eat? And there's always this kid, and they say this is associated with acne, cancer, and all this shit. And there's always this kid that, because he can't pronounce this word. And it's like, petrofleur. I'm like, perfect. I said, I've been waiting for you. It's real simple. If you can't pronounce that shit, don't eat that shit. Nothing in nature that you're supposed to have in your body has 16 syllables. Okay? And I've had them come after me, and it's like nobody's ever told me that before. So we have to, people ask me what I do, and I tell them, I change culture. It's like, well, what do you mean? What the hell is that? That's vague. I'm like, I change culture through soil. People think it's about the food. It's not about the food. It's about freedom. That's what it's about. And before that, it's about people. And that's what this is about. But right now we have, our food is a weapon that has been formed against us. You want to talk about a real WMD, a weapon of mass destruction? It's our food system. And you think, and you guys, Flint, Michigan, you think there's only one? You think that Flint, Michigan is the only place? No, it's not. Most of the information that we need, we don't have. And all you people in the audience with uterus sizes that are of childbearing ages, before you even know that you're pregnant, you have passed BPAs on to your unborn fetus. So that means plastic. So basically, they found that there's a study that they did in Paris, and we're not decomposing the way we used to because of all the plastic in our body. And basically, if you there's a study that this doctor in Berkeley did, and what he proved with the products in Roundup and different things, that they were changing the sex of frogs. Anybody know about this? 3 people. And with this, see, people are like, well, what the hell does frogs have to do with us? Why do you think we dissected frogs in biology? They're close to us. So what this can do is, if everything is all of a sudden losing its genitalia, if we're losing sperm, do you guys get where I'm going with this? Us as a race, we can be annihilated. So what they went back to Dr. Tyrone Hayes and said, no, these what you came up with, dude, this is not right. We need some other results. He said, no, we did it 5 times, and this is what's happening. And so what did they do after that? They tried to discredit everything he's done. They came after him like a ton of bricks, and just like the same with the Monsanto case. When they went in, they found out that they've known about these chemicals, they've known about these problems, they've known about these cancers for years. But yet it's still being sprayed at your park where your kids play. It's still being sprayed in the streets where you live. It's still being sprayed on kids' yards. Why are we allowing this? Why are we the silence of the lambs? Because that's basically what happened. We're letting greedy ass corporations basically control our lives. And that's what I'm here to. I don't really tell people what I'm trying to do. I let them think, yeah, I'm a gardener, woo. Yeah. And it's like, I don't want people to know what I do. I want to be stealth, I want to fly like the stealth fighter and you not know and then I want to drop bombs on your ass. And, the fact that we've gotten to this place that being healthy is a form of resistance is kind of asinine, and I'm trying to change that. And I talk to a lot of kids that live in poverty, and one of the things I tell them is, just because you grew up in poverty doesn't have to live in you. So we need to and people tell me, Ron, you're giving people hope. And I like to say, fuck hope. Because you can't do nothing with it. You can't do shit. You can't take it to the bank. Say, look, I got this basket full of hope. Can't take it to the supermarket. What we need is opportunity. And that's what I want to give people. I want to give people opportunity to change their life, to rethink everything that they've been taught. And that's my mission. It's like Malcolm X said. If you want to understand a flower, you study the seed. You want to hold up another card? How much time am I out of time? You're going to kick me off the stage now. So I got this came. I didn't. A lot of this came to me once I was here, and I get to talk to. I get to travel around the world. I mean, I got a hell of a job, you guys. I mean, serious. So just imagine some random black guy plants a carrot in the street on South Central, and the next thing you know, he's flying first class to Rome or some shit. I love America. I mean, really. And I get to talk to these brilliant scientists and these brilliant ass doctors that spend all of this money to learn, to go to college and get degrees. And I'm sitting at the table eating the same damn meal they're eating. It's a beautiful thing. But I do get to spread my word. I do get to have situations where I got this father in India. He's got what was that, 3 years ago, 11 and 12-year-old brother and sister, his kids, and they would send me these, they would send me pictures from India of them propagating plants you know. And they would say, and he says, Ron, they're obsessed with your videos. And he says, they're calling themselves gangster gardeners. And they're recruiting other gangsters from around the neighborhood to start growing food. And I'm like, my job's done. I mean, I got kids in India, you know, that understands that this have nothing to do about criminology. It has nothing to do. No, gardeners are gangster. Farmers are gangster. They doing gangster shit. You know, and that to us, it doesn't have anything to do with a negative like we've associated with. My thing is, we need to change that term. Everybody in this room needs to get gangster about this planet right now, because we are a part of this planet. Okay, we don't just live on, we are a part of it. We are nature. You don't have to go out to see nature. You look in the mirror and you're going to see it. So I don't want to mess up you guys' time, but I'm honored and thank you to be here with you guys. And thank you.
We are not going to forget you. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
That was great. Okay, so our last speaker of the morning is someone I highly respect, because I think you can understand what we talked about, which is the importance of the land and the community that you touch. And when Carolyn was on the phone with me, she's like, Alexis, he is the world's best farmer. He is just the most unbelievable farmer in the world. And for someone like me who works with 43,000 farmers every single day, that brought a big smile to my face, because what they are doing is really not only feeding us, but they are the heartland. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you a farmer who's going to talk to us about cows, carbon, and climate, and is going to talk a lot about how we can align ourselves and respect the land and cherish it.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you. It's an honor to be here. Alexis, Carolyn, and all the crew that put this together. It's a real delight. And it's great to see the awareness of the soil microbiome connection beginning to grow. Because as Ron said, we are absolutely soil. It's just wonderful to be able to go after these three great presentations that created a context here for me. So mine is developed from doing a lot of college speaking, and I work a lot with millennials. We have apprentices and interns and things, and I work a lot with these young people. My life is surrounded by young people. And I became aware that young people think today's times are normal. And it struck me how abnormal our times are. So I wrote a book titled, Folks, This Ain't Normal. It actually, that phrase jumped into me once, just spontaneously speaking at a college. And so then I decided to write a book about it. And I'll just pick out a couple of little highlights here in the few moments that I have this morning to express a little bit. We as a people, we are myopic. I mean, the other day I had an intern call down from the living room. He said, "What are these great big CDs?" LP records. You know, how soon we forget. And all of us have this. We have memory dysfunction, don't we? And we assume that because things are the way they are, they've always been there, and that's just the way it is. But I'm here to tell you things have not always been the way we are, and in the continuum of history, we live in the most strange blip of history that you can imagine. Let's go to one of them. One of them is, we live in a time when children don't have chores. Those of us over 50 grew up where our summers off of school were taken up with canning green beans, thinning the carrots, planting garden, maybe tending a flock of chickens, chopping firewood. Children's work was actually encouraged. Today we call it abuse. And I actually believe that if we want responsible thinking, to use Ron's word, gangsta adults, I want to grow up with young people who have a spiritual, emotional, visceral understanding of the awesomeness and mystery of life because they've grown some tomato plants in a backyard rather than have become the top points getter on Angry Birds and Game of Thrones. How about you? Okay? And the problem is we are now growing. We've talked a lot here about food, and I'm going to talk about food. But I think we need to realize that we are framing our young people today in a fantasy world. They grow up thinking they don't have to work. Somehow the toilet gets cleaned and they don't have to do it. Somehow the clothes get folded and they don't have to do it. Somehow food appears magically on the state. For the first time in human history, we can actually live our lives, flick on with energy and lights and put food on the table and flush our waste away and get water from a spigot and have absolutely no visceral connection to where it comes from and our utter dependency on an ecological womb. And that sets up our young people for a life of hubris instead of humility. And I think that we are creating almost a super race of conquistador mentality that refuses to ask, should we? And only asks, can we? And so as we become a nation of technical expertise, we pay our technical experts on how, but we don't pay our prophets and poets on why. And so, as Stan Parsons, the founder of Ranching for Profit School, says, we have become extremely adept at hitting the bullseye of the wrong target. And so we create more and more problems for ourselves, and we spend amazing research dollars solving the problems that we created because, in the words of the Jurassic Park, just because we can, we should. And I would suggest that's not a fair question. We have a very highly segregated food system. Again, for the first time in human history, food was always highly integrated. Today, it's segregated. And I know that's a loaded word, but I like loaded words because, as Ron said, you've got to hit people with a 2x4 to get their attention. Okay? And so I like to use the word segregated. I mean, we're in a building here surrounded by lawns and mansions. America now has 35 million acres of lawn. We have 36 million acres housing and feeding recreational horses. And I'm not opposed to lawn and I'm not opposed to horses. But I want us to appreciate that 71 million acres, that's enough to feed our entire country without a single farm. We have become that segregated from food. And so we don't know where it comes from. It's produced over here, sprayed with something from over here, fed fertilizer from petroleum that's gotten over here, and we have a completely segregated food system. And I'm about integrated food systems. And let's bring the food closer to ourselves. I'm a big fan of what I call kitchen chickens, okay? I mean, you can throw out the dog, the cat, the gerbil, and the boa constrictor and get a couple of chickens in your condominium. Yes, they will eat the kitchen scraps, and they will give you 2 beautiful eggs a day, and now you don't have to go to the landfill with your kitchen garbage, and the garbage crew can go on strike, and it doesn't affect you because the chickens are eating your garbage, giving you eggs, and you don't have to go to the store and buy eggs. Integrated systems. Every single dining space and kitchen should have enough chickens outside in order to eat the scraps that come out of it. And if you really want the best role model, if you've got teenagers coming up in your house, okay, and you want role models for them, there's no better role model than a chicken. I mean, they get up at the first ray of sunshine. They wake up in the morning, and they're always happy, happy to greet the day. And then they spend all day turning garbage into treasure, working, and then as soon as it starts getting light, they go to bed. They don't think about going out on the town and getting into mischief and problems. There's not a better role model for kids than chickens, And so there's a tremendous amount of ramifications here. But our landscapes, to appreciate that we are in this womb. We're so segregated. The average food mile, the average morsel of food in America now travels over 1,500 miles from field to plate. Now, if you're going to transport the average morsel of food, including very fragile things, watery, fragile things like mescaline mix and greens and little beet greens and things like that, that's not like jerky. That's fragile, perishable stuff. Tomatoes, If you're going to transport that long and warehouse it, we've now for the last 50 years essentially devoted all of our food cultivar research and genetic selection dollars not to food that tastes better, that's nutritionally superior, that's nutrient dense. We have devoted it all to, can it handle, 1,500 miles bouncing around in the back of a tractor trailer between California and the East Coast? We've selected it for, can it stay on a shelf for 3 weeks without going bad? Well, what happens when you select produce and vegetable cultivars for transportation non-spoilability? You select for cardboard. And it tastes like cardboard. We wonder why our kids don't want tomatoes and don't want cucumbers and vegetables. It's because they're bland, they're blah, they're like cardboard. Talk about that backyard tomato that you grab and the juice runs down your elbow, and you're biting into it. Elliot Coleman, one of the, iconic gurus of American four-season farming up in Maine. He grows baby carrots and beets and things like that in Maine. He said, I knew I'd arrived when I found out from my customers that my baby carrots in the winter, in January, in Maine, locally grown in greenhouses, were the #1 trading item in the school lunches. I'll give you a Snickers bar for those carrots. Now that's when you've arrived. But see, to get there, it takes taste. And that taste comes from soil. And half of everything that he teaches is about how to create soil with enough Brix index so that we actually have the full nutrient profile. All of the evidence and information that's developed about taste in food. Taste is all about the full panoply of enzymes and vitamins and minerals, that explosive taste. We've all tasted things that are explosive and things that are bland, okay? Same thing is true in meat, milk, dairy, everything else. You want bland milk, you get it from Holsteins in a confinement factory dairy farm. You want milk that explodes in your mouth, get it from an all-grass, whole milk, non-pasteurized, non-homogenized product. And so we've got all of this stabilizing thing, cardboard, and we put all these stabilizers and things in food to try to prolong shelf life, and all of these unpronounceable things. We're the first generation, as Ron said, we're the first generation that has routinely eaten things that you can't pronounce. I'm kind of a believer with Michael Pollan, who wrote Omnivore's Dilemma. He said probably we should not eat anything that was unavailable before 1900. That's kind of the industrial cut. If it wasn't available before 1900, just don't eat it. And we can all be very thankful that the hot dog was introduced at the 1890 World's Fair. It just kind of slipped in there under the radar. But if we're putting all these stabilizers and shelf life encouragers in our food won't rot. You want to eat food that rots. We're the first generation who routinely eats food that doesn't rot. And that includes organic power things and whatever. Look, if you put something on your table and you can leave it sitting there at room temperature for a year, it probably won't digest, because our digestion is similar to decomposition. I ran into a couple of wonderful, wonderful ladies in California that were doing a farm to school program with a gardening program. They had a 3-acre farm, and the science and the environmental sciences group had all written this farm into their curriculum. And they had this great big coffin-sized earthworm bed. You know, it was about 8 feet long, 3 feet deep, 2 feet wide. And so one of the assignments was, early in the season, was they told the kids, they said, bring some food to put in the worm bed this week. So, you know, the kids came with food. And, of course, it was Twizzlers and Snickers bars and, candy, high fructose corn syrup, whatever. They put all that in the worm bed. And then the two teachers put in an orange, an apple, a piece of beef, and a tomato. Okay? Well, next week, the kids come back. They come, once a day, once a week to the school, to the farm, to the class. And of course, they've all been prepped for this. So they go charging up the hill. They open up the box and they pull out the Twizzlers. They pull out the Snickers bar. They pull out the Cheerios. They pull out all this stuff. And they go over here to the other side. Well, where's the apple? Where's the orange? Where's the piece of beef? Where's the tomato? It's gone. The obvious lesson is, why would you want to eat something worms won't even eat? And it's this wonderful graphic lesson of a metaphor for the young people to help them to understand there is a difference in food. And we need to think about food. We eat unconsciously. You travel around the country, around the world, I'm sorry, not around the country, around the world. And around the world, there is a food culture. You go to Spain, go to Italy, go to Sweden. I mean, there's a food culture. Everybody I ask anywhere around the world and say, what do you see as America's food culture? There's one answer. McDonald's. Fast food. That's our culture. We're the only one for which food has become an invasion of what's important in life. It's just a pit stop that you got to get off and get some fuel, but it's really not that important in life. And so how do we move forward with this? And so I would suggest that one of the things we need to do, and this is only one, is we need to get in our kitchens. I do a lot of media interviews. People say, well, give me something that somebody can do. I say, get in your kitchen. Oh, no. And then, of course, I'm branded as some, sexist, chauvinist. I didn't say women. I said, get in your kitchen. Okay? Men can do this too. All right? Although 90% of all food decisions are made by, actually, 75% of all food menus are developed by people under 10 years old. That's the truth. Okay? And so somebody's got to lead here. And so getting in your kitchen is the first, that is the most, I so appreciate Ron's point about freedom. Listen, if you want to vote against the system, the emperor that we all know in this room, the emperor who has no clothes, if you want to take a swipe at that fallacy, that slavery of big food, you know where it happens first? In the kitchen. You start buying unprocessed whole foods, using your kitchen to prepare, package, preserve. Suddenly, you have knocked the knees out of the big food processors, the folks that put in red dye 29. You're not going to go and get a package of grass-finished ground beef from a neighbor farmer and get red dye 29 in it. He doesn't buy packages of that, okay? And so if you're not going to get monosodium glutamate, right? And so not buying processed food. And when I say get in your kitchen, I'm not talking about going back to hoop skirts, hearth cooking, and toting water from the spring. We now, as a culture, have spent more modernizing, techno-glitzifying our kitchens more than any other culture in the world, and been more profoundly unknowing of how to use them. We now have I mean, Grandma would have given her eye teeth for what we've got today. We've got hot and cold water on demand. You don't have to get up at 4 o'clock to start a fire in the wood stove to get hot water before Pa comes in for milking the cow. You know, we've got refrigerators. You don't have to go down to the spring house. I mean, we got slow cookers, bread makers, ice cream makers, Instapots, okay? We got the coolest, glitzy stuff in the world. Cooking does not take the time, energy that it did 80 years ago. Okay, so we can be very, in no time in human history has a culture been more positioned to develop domestic culinary arts and been more profoundly disinterested in it. We now have the technology to enable us to do it. And so I would suggest that as we get in our kitchens and we get unprocessed and we start working with it, we develop mastery, we develop skill, we develop a larder. So when we lie down with our beloved at night, we are proximate to a larder that we have created, and we start living in a life of abundance. How many of you are interested in surrounding your family and your nest with a sense of abundance? Okay. And so I would suggest that as we garner this mastery and this ability to surround ourselves with abundance that we have viscerally participated in, there is a soul, emotional, and yes, physical, satiating development in our families and our lives as we rediscover our own health in our own homes with our own hands. And we're not dependent on somebody else. We have freed ourselves from the shackles of other people's agendas, and we have moved into a zone of abundance in our own lives and families. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joel. I didn't even say his name when I introduced him, did I? That was Joel Salatin. That was excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so this morning we had a phenomenal series of discussions. You learned about changing your diet, about the economic impact of health, how to detox, how to love yourself, how sometimes in periods of extremity you learn more about your body, loving your soil, and thinking about buying local. Now, let's all go upstairs to the vendor area for our lecture series, and then we'll be back here at 12:45 for our lunch speakers. Have a great afternoon.